Today, we're diving into one of the most essential skills in the long dark, navigation. Getting lost out here isn't just frustrating, it can be run-threatening. That's why I've put together my top 10 tips for learning to navigate any region with confidence. In this video, we'll cover simple strategies to help you understand the landscape, find landmarks, and break down each map so it feels less intimidating. These are all the steps I personally use when I first step into a new map to help me quickly learn and master it. Before we get into my top 10 tips, it's also worth noting Pilgrim mode is always great for a first-time walkthrough of a map, or just learning the basics of the game in general. This is a great way to just enjoy the game without the pressure of hostile wildlife. But let's go ahead and get into the top 10 tips for learning new maps and how to navigate. Tip 1. Walk the perimeter first. When I first enter a new region, I always start by walking along the edge of the map. Following the perimeter gives you a feel for the map's overall size and lets you pick up on points of interest along the borders, like caves, structures, or ropes. It also gives you a feel for the flow of the landscape. Plus, it's an easier, low-risk way to start understanding the layout without diving straight into the center. Think of this as tracing the outline before filling in the details. This approach makes exploring a new region much less overwhelming and gives you a foundation for tackling the interior. Tip 2. Take note of landmarks. Once you've got the perimeter down, the next step is to start recognizing distinct landmarks. In the long dark, natural markers like unique rock formations, certain trees, cliffs, bodies of water, and even something as simple as a rosehip bush can act as your guideposts. Noticing and remembering these features helps you create a mental map and gives you waypoints you can use to track where you've been and where you're headed. You may also note when you find an area of interest, the name of that building, cave, or landmark pops up in the top left corner of the screen, which can help you associate a name with whatever that landmark is. Especially if you go look at an online map, this will help you better determine where exactly you are and what is around you. For example, in Mystery Lake, the lookout tower is an easy to spot landmark, while in Hush River Valley, waterfalls and caves can act as critical markers. Start by picking out a few standard features and using them to orient yourself. As you get more familiar with this region, these landmarks will naturally become part of your navigation toolkit. Tip 3. Stop and look back. As you explore, make it a habit to occasionally stop and look back at where you've come from. It might sound simple, but seeing the terrain from the opposite direction helps build a stronger mental map, and it makes it easier to recognize landmarks on your return trip. In the long dark, landscapes often look completely different when viewed from the other way around. By taking a moment to observe your path in reverse, you'll be better prepared if you need to retrace your steps or find your way back to a familiar location. This habit is especially useful in areas with dense trees or twisting paths, where it's easy to get turned around. Tip 4. Stick to roads, waterways, and railroads. One of the simplest ways to keep your bearings in the long dark is to stick to the natural and man-made paths in each region. Roads, rivers, shorelines, and railroads often serve as reliable routes that can guide you to key locations, resources, and sometimes even safe shelters. Following paths like these can simplify navigation, helping you to travel safely and find your way back if you need to. Wherever possible, use these paths as the backbone of your exploration, especially when you're just starting out on a new map. Tip 5. Find the middle. Once you've started exploring a new region, it helps to identify a central landmark or middle point of the map. This middle can be any defining feature, like a road, river, or large structure that divides the map and serves as a point of reference you can use to orient yourself. In Mystery Lake, for example, the train tracks cut across the map, creating a natural middle. Some maps, like Ash Canyon or Timberwolf Mountain, might not have an obvious middle. In these cases, find a large, unique feature to anchor your navigation, like the summit in Timberwolf Mountain. Having this point gives you a stable reference that you can return to and use as a starting point for exploring different sections of the map. Tip 6. Divide and conquer. Once you've identified the middle of the map, try breaking the region into smaller, more manageable sections. Divide the map into chunks, such as left and right, or north and south, lakeside, and forest side. This helps simplify exploration. You can use whatever names make sense to you to define an area. This strategy helps reduce the overwhelming feeling you can get in unfamiliar territory. By exploring one section at a time, you'll gradually build familiarity with the entire region without feeling lost or overextended. Plus, having the middle as a reference point makes it easier to track which section you're in and navigate between areas. Tip 7. Focus on the ground level first. When you're first exploring a new region, it's tempting to climb to higher ground to get a better view. But a great approach is to fully explore the ground level before moving to elevated or lowered areas. Understanding the main terrain first gives you a strong foundation and helps you get familiar with landmarks, paths, and important locations without adding the complexity of upper or lower levels. Once you're comfortable with the ground level, connecting it to other elevations will feel more natural since you already know where paths and cliffs lead. If you do get lost, climbing to higher ground can still be useful to locate familiar landmarks or help you find something you recognize. Tip 8. Use high points as reference beacons. As you start exploring a new map, identify one or two easily visible spots you can use as reference points. These could be lookout towers, tall cliffs, or even a distinct mountain in the backdrop of the scenery. For example, in Pleasant Valley, there is a mountain near the rope climb to Timberwolf Mountain that I personally use. Whenever you see this high point, you'll know roughly where you are in relation to it. Using a recognizable high point in the distance can help you stay on track, even if you're navigating complex areas. Tip 9. Create breadcrumb trails. A reliable way to avoid getting lost is to leave a small trail of markers. Think of it as creating a breadcrumb trail. For this, I recommend using cattail heads or tinder plugs. Unlike sticks, which naturally spawn on the ground and can be confusing, cattail heads and tinder plugs don't randomly appear, making them ideal markers for your path. Drop one of these items every few steps when venturing into unfamiliar areas, especially if you're unsure of the way back. This method is more dependable than relying on your footprints in the snow, which can disappear over time due to the game's weather mechanics. By creating physical trails with cattails or tinder plugs, you'll have a permanent guide to lead you back to safety if you ever get turned around. Tip 10. Practice and patience. Mastering navigation in the long dark takes time, patience, and plenty of practice. Every time you step into a new region, it's an opportunity to build familiarity with the landscape. Start by setting small goals, like locating a specific structure or landmark, rather than trying to memorize the entire map at once. With each trip, you'll find that the terrain becomes more recognizable and your mental map grows stronger. Be patient with yourself. Navigation in the long dark isn't about speed. It's about understanding the terrain well enough that you can make safe, confident moves. Over time, even the most complex regions will start to feel like familiar ground. And those are my top 10 tips for learning to master maps in the long dark. Thanks for watching, and I hope these top 10 tips help you feel more confident learning to navigate.